Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Huri Amir, Head of Physiology Department, Faisalabad Medical University. Now, as we have started the basal ganglia, what are basal ganglia? They are the accessory parts in the brain which are acting along with that of the motor system. Now, we have done their components, their functioning, their circuitry over there in the brain, how they are functioning, and now we have started the diseases related to it. We have done the diseases which are hyperkinetic diseases, which are like chorea, Sydenham chorea, hemiballismus, and now we are going to start with that of the hypokinetic diseases. Now, first of all and most important of the hypokinetic diseases, they are the Parkinsonism, Parkinson's disease or paralysis agitans. Now, how it is actually characterized and how it actually occurs. It actually results from the widespread destruction of that portion of the substantia nigra that sends the dopamine secreting nerve fibers to the caudate nucleus. Now let's see what is the generalized appearance of the person who is suffering from this disease of Parkinsonism. The pathophysiology of Parkinsonism is that the dopamine, which is usually and mostly known as inhibitory neurotransmitter, is secreted from the caudate and the putamen nuclei, which are the parts of the basal ganglia. Now, destruction of the dopaminergic neurons in the substantia nigra of the patient results into that of activity, or you can say the overactivity, overexcitation of caudate nucleus and putamen. And what it actually results into is that there is the continuous output of excitatory signals to the corticospinal motor control system. Now, this is actually the essence of the pathophysiology, that there is the continuous excitability, the overexcitability, exaggeration of the information which is going from these caudate and putamen nuclei to that of the spinal motor control system. Now, these signals could overly excite many or all of the muscles of the body, so they actually lead to rigidity of the body. Now, some of the feedback circuits might easily oscillate because of the loss of their inhibition. And so that's why, as there is no inhibition, so the tremors occur. Now, they are actually because of the loss of inhibition, so the person. Now, what are the signs and symptoms? What are the clinical features of the person who is suffering from that of Parkinsonism or Parkinson's disease or paralysis agitans? Now, first is actually the rigidity of the whole body because of the inhibition. Now, rigidity of much of the musculature of the body occurs. There is resting tremors, there are involuntary tremors, they are there. There is akinesia. What is it? Akinesia is actually that it is very difficult for a person to initiate the movement. So difficulty in initiating the movement and later on to stop the movement. There is postural instability caused by impaired postural reflexes leading to poor balance and falls. There is dysphagia. There is dysarthria. Dysphagia is inability to swallow. Dysarthria is inability to talk normally. There is gait disturbances. There is fatigue. Now, signs and symptoms are tremors. Now, tremors, they are like pill rolling type of tremors, and they are very much marked when the person is at rest. Then there is rigidity. Now, this type of rigidity is greater in flexors and large muscle groups. So the patient has attitude of flexion. There is lead pipe type of rigidity. There is cog wheel type of rigidity. Now lead pipe rigidity is known as that there is lead pipe type of movement is this, that sustained resistance is there while performing a movement. Cogwheel type is actually the jerky resistance to the passive movement. There is mask-like face because there is inability to produce the facial expressions. The swallowing is difficulty. There is dysphagia. There is dysarthria. There is disturbance in movements. There is akinesia. There is depression. There is dementia, loss of memory. There is orthostatic hypotension. There is smelling disturbance. There is eyes are affected. There is reduced blinking because of akinesia. The visual hallucinations, they are there. The reflexes are usually normal. There is bradykinesis, which means that there is slow movements, monotonous speech, short steps with flexed trunk. This is the fascinant gait. So you are being asked about that what are the different the clinical features which are there in the person who is suffering from Parkinsonism. That there is slowness of movement, slow in initiating the movement, slow to stop the movement, difficulty to do the movements, there are short steps, there is flexed trunk, and this is the festinant type of gait, and the feet appear to be as if they are frozen on the ground. Now, what is the treatment of Parkinsonism? Treatment is with that of levodopa, which controls the rigidity, the akinesia. Then there is L-deprenyl, transplanted fetal dopamine cells into caudate and putamen nuclei. They are also being done. The surgery is that there is destroying the part of the feedback circuitry in the basal ganglia. So it is important to know the treatment options for the person who is suffering from Parkinsonism. You can see the generalized appearance of the person who is suffering from that of Parkinsonism. You can see the flexed posture, the feet which are glued or frozen to that of the ground, difficult to take the steps, and if he is taking the steps they are quite short. Then there is stooped posture, the tremors, they are there, mask-like facies. The face appearance, the facial appearance is known as the facies, and the mask-like facies means that there is loss of facial expression, generalized rigidity, and the arms, elbows, wrists, hips, knees, they're all flexed, and this is actually the generalized appearance of the person who is suffering from that of Parkinsonism. Now let's talk about what is important that in the motor system. The importance of integration of the many parts of the total motor control system is very, very important. Now this integration is taking place at the level of spinal cord. Now spinal level, motor cortex level, hind brain level, associated functions of cerebellum, turn on and turn off mechanism, and the associated functions of basal ganglia. This is very important to know that how the integration of different portions of the total motor control system is taking place. Let's talk about them one by one. The first one is the spinal level. Now what happens over there at the level? Now the pattern of movements of all muscles of the body, they are programmed. So we can say that whatever withdrawal reflexes they are there, they're all programmed. The cord is also locus for complex patterns of rhythmical motions like to and fro movements of limbs. All these programs of the cord can be commanded into action by higher levels of motor control, or they can be inhibited while the higher level take over the motor cortex level. The motor cortex system provides motor signals to the spinal cord. When needed, the corticospinal system can bypass the cord patterns, replacing them with higher level patterns from the brainstem or cerebral cortex. The cortical patterns are usually complex. Also, they can be learned, whereas the cord patterns are mainly determined by heredity and are said to be hardwired. Now let's talk about the hind brain. The hind brain has two important functions. That is the maintenance of the axial tone of the body for the purpose of standing, modification of tone, and maintaining associated functions of the cerebellum. The cerebellum functions with all levels of muscle control. It functions with the spinal cord especially to enhance the stretch reflex and low resisting effect of the basic stretch reflex. At the brainstem level, the cerebellum functions to make the postural movements of the body and equilibrium. At the cerebral cortex level, the cerebellum provides extra motor force. The cerebellum helps to program in advance muscle contractions in a fraction of a second, functions with the cerebral cortex in association with cerebral cortex. The neural circuit for this passes from cerebral cortex to lateral zones of cerebellum and then back to the cerebral cortex. The cerebellum functions mainly when muscle movements have to be rapid. Turn on and turn off mechanism. Near the end of each movement, the cerebellum turns on an antagonistic muscles at exactly the right time and with proper force to stop the movement at the intended point. Furthermore, there is good physiological evidence that all aspects of this turn-on, turn-off patterns by the cerebellum can be the associated functions of basal ganglia. Now, the basal ganglia, they are essential for motor control, but they are quite different from cerebellum. Their most important functions are to help the cortex executing the subconscious but learned patterns of movements, and to help the execution of planned movements for writing, small and large, for throwing a ball, and for typing. So the minute detailing is actually the functions of basal ganglia. Cognition, beginning in the thinking processes of the cerebrum and steps of action for responding to each new situation, such as planning one's immediate motor response to an assailant who hits the person in face, is the function of basal ganglia. So basal ganglia, they are very important regarding the thinking process where that is involved, that how the manipulation of the motor activity should be done in order to address to any change of the atmosphere situation also. Now, this is actually the slide from cerebellum. So now that's the end of the integration of the total motor control system. So today what we have done is very important disease, Parkinsonism, and one of the other important frequently asked that how the integration of the total motor control system is occurring. So that's all for today's lecture, and God bless you all, and keep doing good work. Stay blessed.